Welcome to the Fitness Simplified Podcast. I'm Brooke Davis, women's functional nutritionist and fitness specialist with Elysian Women's Wellness, and I'm here to simplify your fitness. If you've ever wondered why fat loss feels like a mystery in your 40s or why what used to work just doesn't anymore, this episode is absolutely for you. Whether you're struggling with stubborn weight gain, feeling like your metabolism is slowing down, confused, maybe just about how to fuel your body for muscle and energy, then today's conversation is going to give you some clarity, practical tools, and a whole lot of aha moments. Today, I am joined by Philip Pape, a certified nutrition coach, body recomposition specialist, and the host of the wildly popular Wits Weights podcast, which is where you can find our other conversation around nutrition and lifestyle shifts needed during perimenopause in order to see the fat loss results you want. So make sure that you go find that link in the show notes and give his podcast a follow and a listen. Philip is known for helping men and women optimize their metabolism, build lean muscle, and improve their body composition. So today, we're breaking down what's really going on with your metabolism in perimenopause, how to shift your nutrition training to build muscle instead of lose it, and how to stop chasing quick fixes and start building a body that actually feels good to live in. I have Philip here today, and we are going to be talking about muscle and metabolism during perimenopause. I am really excited for this. It is such a powerful conversation for women during this life transition. And so let's dive right into it. Philip, how are you today?
I'm great, Brooke. It's been so long since I've seen you. It's been like 3 minutes. It's great to see you again.
Yes. To also update listeners, this is a combo episode. So this is a really cool thing that we're doing. So half of the podcast is here and the other half of the conversation is over at his podcast, Wits Weights. So make sure to go check that out. Give him a follow. Everything will be linked in the show notes as well. So let's just really get right into it. I want to talk about, like I said, muscle, metabolism, and perimenopause. And so tell me, why is muscle the missing piece in most women specifically, fat loss struggles?
Because everything that we complain about, that we struggle with, that we're frustrated with, that prevents us from losing weight, that causes us to be even more stressed than we should be, that causes us to get frail, to get weak, to die in the hospital of old age. I'm sorry for the really terrible visuals here, is because of muscle. Like, yeah, we have an obesity problem in this country. And I think if you're a little over fat or overweight in terms of body fat, we can work on that. But even folks that I've worked with who are 450 pounds, like we get them training from day one and it starts to unlock so many different things. So for women in particular, you and I talked about hormones a lot on the other episode, so I'm not going to get into that, but there are physiological changes that occur with age that just make it even harder to hold on to that muscle and bone density. And so muscle's the missing piece because if you're not doing it, your things are just going to inevitably decline. There's nothing you can do about it with nutrition, supplements, anything else without getting in the gym, lifting heavy, putting that load on your body like a human. And it's a lot of fun when you do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a little biased, but I love it also. The over fat and under muscled concept is, it's not just like you said, we don't just have an obesity problem, we have a muscle problem, because very few, I think it's maybe up to 20% of, maybe 30% of women specifically meet the strength training suggestions put out, by health organizations. So that is a very, very small percentage. And even those who are strength training, I'm curious, I actually don't know what the guidelines were. It was, I'm sure, just a self-reported study that was done. And so they're like, yeah, I lift weights. It's like, but do you lift weights? Are you doing it the right way?
I'm doing the YouTube workouts, so I'm lifting weights. And that's just one of my boogeymen is YouTube workouts.
Right. Well, the pros and cons, for sure. I understand though. Believe me, I understand.
Quotes, YouTube workouts.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll use the quotes again. You have to watch the other podcast for that joke. So the role of, the role of muscle in metabolism. Talk to me about how this is shifting. You mentioned a little bit, but during perimenopause, as we get older, in our 30s, 40s, 50s, in women, how is that role of, what is muscle doing and how is that then impacting our metabolism, the ability to lose fat, all of that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I went to a training a few months ago with Dr. Bill Campbell, right, at a University of South Florida. And it was specifically on peri and postmenopause, especially to us guys that we have no clue, we didn't
Good for you.
stuff.
Yeah,
And
good for you.
I learned from the ladies, right? And he was talking about this, he showed this graph, right, of when you hit this point where your hormones start to shift, that muscle starts to decline, fat starts to go up. But what's happened with a lot of women is they may be attempting to maintain their weight and kind of eating in a way they ate in their 20s. And all of a sudden, either they start to get overweight and fluffier and more, less muscular and weaker, or they even might maintain the scale weight, but they're getting that, muffin top, right? All the terms, the triggering terms, the belly fat, they're getting kind of a poorer posture, maybe feeling weaker, like all of the things that are way more important, in my opinion, than just what does the number say on the scale. And that is because of the muscle mass affecting then also your metabolism. And that affects, in a vicious cycle, how much you can eat and how much energy you have. And of course, then your physique and your body image. And it's like all tied into that time of life when you're stressed. You might be raising kids, taking care of your family. It's like everything's going the wrong direction, right? You're just frustrated. So metabolism, it gets misaligned in many ways, or I should say miscommunicated in terms of, whether it's broken or damaged. None of that's true. Your metabolism is extremely adaptable, and that's very, very empowering, because I know if I take a woman who's like 50, never lifted before, struggling with her hormones, and we just start lifting weights, that is going to push her expenditure up as she builds muscle mass, but also because she's fueling herself properly, she's going to start eating more protein, more fiber, and it's all kind of supporting your metabolism. And then that's the thing that unlocks what you were thinking about in the first place, which was weight loss, which now you've shifted to think about fat loss and body composition.
Yeah. That shift in mindset, which is something we didn't talk about last spot, but so important, right? In terms of thinking about what the actual goal is, because the scale number and unfortunately, it does still seem to be a real priority for most women, and that is the least important thing they should be worrying about. So if you could shift your mindset from weight loss, right? Because you can lose weight. I just posted, I was being kind of a smartass, but somebody posted on Facebook and was like, what's the fastest way to lose 20 pounds? And I was like, the fastest way, stop eating. Like, you'll crush it, right? I was like, the healthiest way, and I like put this whole list out there and was like, I know it's a little complicated, like feel free to reach out. But so prioritizing fat loss over weight loss is the real key to doing this successfully as we age and through perimenopause and through midlife, for sure.
I know we were talking about having a resilient body and how we lose our vitality reserve with age. This is how to get it back. Like, that's the way I see it, is you build muscle. So some people will simplify it and say, okay, you have more muscle, burns more calories. Yes, that's true. 5 to 9 calories per pound per day, which will give you another 100 to 200 calories if you're a woman gaining, 5, 10 pounds of muscle. But there's so many knock-on effects, so many cascade effects of having the additional muscle, one of which being you don't have to be as light on the scale and you can still be leaner. And people discount that or don't realize that because of the fear of like the gaining or being at that weight. But man, when I see someone who just gives up the notion of losing weight because they don't need to, because they got the body they want, that's just amazing. That's so inspiring.
Yeah. And so freeing, right? Instead of being a slave to this number you see every morning, like, my goodness, instead you're like, I feel amazing. I feel like a badass in the gym. Like, I'm super capable. I can hike with my kids. I can, do all the things in my yard that I want. Like, those are far more, incentivizing things to, keep your health going than like just this number on the scale. I literally just had a conversation with this woman the other day who was like, I'm just so tired of being so hyper focused on these like last 10 pounds. And I was like, I love it. Like, thank you for the honesty. Like, okay. So I started asking her questions. I was like, why do you care? And she was like, well, to be like, since like, now that I think about it, like, I don't really. She's like, I'm worried about what other people think. And I was like, and why is that? Right. So we like continue to have that conversation because it comes back down to like societal pressure, what everybody thinks you should look like and, weigh apparently. And and most people don't even care for themselves. Technically, it's just what everybody else thinks about their weight. So that shift So key. What are some of the major benefits of having more muscle other than, 6 to 9 calories per pound, that are going to help just overall life? And how does that also impact kind of hormonal shifts and metabolism?
Yeah, it's such a big topic, right? So the big ones that come to mind, first and foremost, is to build muscle in the first place. What do you have to do? You have to produce more force at the limit of what your body is capable of to cause an adaptation. So your strength increases. Not necessarily your muscles get bigger, your strength increases, neuromuscular adaptation, right? But once you hit a limit, your body says, oh my God, my muscle cross-sectional area, it's not big enough for what you're telling me to do with this barbell. We got to get bigger. And so to get muscles, you have to get strength, and strength alone is also a huge missing piece in the human population today. And it's the root of like all decline when you get older, is the lack of strength. So that's one reason, kind of flipping the script on that, of it's not even about muscle in many cases, it's the strength and the bone density first. But then the muscle, besides, looking good and all that, is a huge battery or sink for glucose. Again, we talked about that on the other show as well. But I love to reiterate that insulin sensitivity and hormonal health are significantly mitigated or balanced when you have more muscle. And not only having the more muscle, it's the act of getting the muscle. People don't realize when you train, whether it's an hour-long session, or we were talking about exercise snacks and you do it 10 minutes, 10 times a day, or you're just sprint up the stairs or even walk, but especially lifting, you're sending a signal that I need to pump up that testosterone. I need to pump up that IGF-1, growth hormone. And by the way, cortisol gets regulated when you do that. And then insulin sensitivity goes up because now you're shuttling nutrients efficiently to where they need to be and where they want to be. And now you need to eat more carbs, which who doesn't want that, right? Who doesn't want that? So that's just like scratching the surface. I mean, Brooke, you and I, we pay attention to the studies and the research. There's new stuff coming out every day on the benefit of having and building and keeping muscle that we could just like talk for 3 hours on.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that, the exercise snacks there, in terms of testosterone, there says the main, for women specifically, testosterone is really only elevated for like a short amount of time post strength training session, when it comes to like impacting hormones. So if you're not getting those in, then you're not getting the benefits, of that you can actually make big impact of, throughout perimenopause as well. Um, and so, with that, you mentioned strength versus muscle size. One of the biggest things I hear from women is like, I don't want to get bulky, which I have some sarcastic and I have some, truth response to that too. But tell me more about that, and how do we avoid that? Tell me more.
Okay. So 2 of my recent interviews were with Nikki Sims of Barbell Logic. It was
Okay.
called Why You Need to Bulk as a Woman, just something like that.
Yeah.
And then another one was Holly Baxter,
Yes.
IFBB Pro.
Yep.
And the very first question I asked is like, what are most women not doing? And she's like, building muscle and going in a weight gain, like muscle building phase. I always joke that like as a man with plenty of testosterone who lifts really hard and eats a lot of food, I can't get bulky. Like I want to be bigger. I watch that guy, Reacher. It's on like Prime, right? This big guy, he's jacked and everything. I'm like, first, I don't have his height, but even if I did, like the amount of work it would take, he's probably enhanced. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's just too much work to even possibly get there. So with women, if you've pick the ideal physique for you, whatever that is, out in the world. When it comes to muscularity, chances are she's a lot heavier than you think she is, right? Because muscle is a lot denser. And how would you describe her? Like, would you describe her as a She-Hulk or like a testosterone roided up bodybuilder? Or would you describe her as lean, toned, fit, athletic? Because that person has a lot more muscle than you do, and stop worrying about it. That's what I'm going to say. Stop worrying about it.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned, it is insanely difficult. I mean, I've been lifting for over 15 years, hard, heavy, like done CrossFit, all the things.
Yeah,
and
you're
nobody looks
huge.
at
You're
me.
just
Yeah.
like massive traps, huge deltoid caps. My God, it's disgusting.
I know. So the reality of it is that women, right? You mentioned testosterone. We don't have the testosterone needed naturally, right, to produce some of what people, I think have the expectation of is going to happen when you lift weights. One of my favorite like trends going around is the video of a woman picking up a barbell, and then it like flashes to her husband in her clothes, like lifting. It's like, yes, that's exactly what's gonna happen. So yeah, the role of testosterone is huge in that. And you mentioned enhanced. So are you familiar with I mean, performance enhancing drugs and kind of the prevalence of them in fitness communities and things like that?
It's not my area of expertise at all. No,
Okay, yeah.
I don't get into that. Yeah.
I don't know statistics specifically, but it's insanely high.
Sure. Instagram is
Like
probably all that. Yeah.
even women who don't have like that much muscle can be on performance inhibitors like Anavar, things like that, just helping them
Sure.
lean out, right?
Well, now there's GLP-1 and microdosing, which is another form of enhancement, but that's different. Yeah.
right, that's a whole nother podcast, which I also have a podcast on that too. But yeah, most people who you see, most women that people see who are like, oh, I don't want to go like that. It's like, not only like you would have to work insanely hard for the next 5 to 10 years to do that, but you would also need to be on drugs. You would need to be on performance enhancing drugs.
Let me put it in perspective with just straight numbers, because just yesterday I talked to 2 different clients about lean gains, and I work with a lot of women who are like, how do I build muscle now? Which I love. I just so love that, because I think the narrative's changing. And what we're looking at is a woman who weighs, say, 140, her goal might be 150, and that's over 6 to 9 to 12 months. And that is half of that at least is going to be muscle. And I actually just did a case study with a client who finished, or she's almost done with her bulk, and probably 2/3 of what she gained is lean mass. A little bit of it's fluid that's going to come off, and then the rest of it is muscle, and then obviously the opposite of that is fat. And so when you think about it, if you gain 10 pounds and 6 or 7 are muscle, that's changing your life. And then you only have to lose like 3 or 4 pounds to be back to the level of like absolute body fat percentage you had, but with more muscle and heavier on the scale. It's not a lot of weight. It's not a lot of weight. So when women are afraid of getting bulky, I know sometimes they're not really thinking muscle. They're also thinking fat, like fluffy and bulky. And so there are fears that we need to address about that. And there are healthy perspectives that you want to cultivate to get to that point and be ready, and then like attack the things that matter and that move the needle. Like, how are you progressing in the gym? As opposed to, my waist is getting a little bigger right now, my clothes fit tight. Well, okay, yes, that's true. Maybe we should have a different set of clothes that you look fantastic in when you're just a little bigger and you got nice muscular arms, and then we can reframe it and then work on a little fat loss later if you need it.
Yeah. Which brings into the next, brings me into the next subject of the psychological component of that, right? They're like, I don't want to feel fluffy, right? And again, I think that mostly comes down to societal pressure, how everybody else thinks I should look, that kind of thing. So how do you go about maybe having those conversations with clients about, taking that on and finding the benefits of it versus just about how they look or what the scale says?
Yeah, it's very dependent on the client, but there are some basics like reframing and statements that you tell yourself. One being like, is it that you want to be small or do you want to be strong? Right? Like, it's little things like that where you shift, okay, what does strength require? And then, stronger is better maybe than being smaller. But of course, there's a lot of conditioning and history behind that. Also, the statements like, I can lift and I can handle this. And like just those little reframes that I work with a client where we try to understand what's making them afraid, and then we reframe it into a positive. I never want somebody to feel like judged for their body, whatever phrase they're in. So I do like to make things objective, use data, track the right measurements, track lots of different things. So we're not stuck on just scale weight or just body fat, right? It's like, how's your sleep? How's your stress? How even hormones, I had a client yesterday reach out all excited because she went to the doctor. She's working with probably a functional doctor, because these days they tend to be a little better with hormones than conventional generally. And she said, the doctor made little adjustments to my therapy. She said, but I'm in way better shape than anybody else for your age, is what she said. I hate that. She said for your age. She's like 50. And she said it's because she's lifting and she's focused on strength, and we haven't dieted that much. Like the clients I see who really want to like lose the weight and we can't get out of that trap of it, we've got to be smaller. Those are the more difficult ones. And in that case, it's more focused on like, where's the end point here? How do we get ourselves prepared so you're lean enough to then build muscle? Like, I always want to come back to getting strong and building muscle. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what came to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's a component of, when to make that priority, right? Because if somebody comes to us and they're overweight, obviously, health-wise, they do need to lose fat. But what we do and is just to make sure, there is phases for the priority, but even through that, right? What kind of methods maybe do you use? Let's do both. We'll start with training wise, but when somebody comes to you and they maybe are overweight, they're over fat, and they need to lose weight, but right, that they also still need muscle. So training wise, how do you set them up for that? And then also nutrition wise, do you use phases? Do you what do you prioritize throughout that process?
Yeah, I mean, I want to meet you where you're at, right? So from a training side, that's first just asking you a bunch of questions like, what's your history? Have you lifted? Usually I want to work with people who have been at least trying to lift weights. It's kind of like a minimum bar. Otherwise, listen to my podcast where I talk about it and go give it a shot and then reach out. But I definitely want you to build strength when you first start as a client. Like, that's my big focus. I know other coaches are like anything goes, bands, dumbbells, body weight. I really want you to get into where you're really pushing the limit of your current capacity. And for most people, that means free weights, progressing into dumbbells and machines in a conventional gym if you can't have one at home. But I do have like a whole guide on what to get at home, how to do it inexpensively. Like, for less than $1,000, you can set up a barbell gym at home in a small space. So there's not excuses. And then when we can get you training, it's very simple. Like, let's take all the stress out. Let's just do 3 days a week, full body, 3 lifts, 10 sets per muscle group per week kind of thing, like very reasonable. And it almost seems shockingly like a low amount of work for them when they came from like either, Peloton world or running world or whatever. But the difference being, after a few weeks, they realize, oh, this is actually hard in its own way, because like doing a full squat to depth with a barbell on my back, heavier than I've ever lifted in my entire life, it's interesting. It's like a hard new thing. And they send me videos and we do form checks and all that. But then they start to love it because you're making progress and you're doing things you've never done in your life. And so in about 3 months, usually that's the time frame, you've gotten really strong. Like, you've built double, triple your starting strength. And then you can start to branch out into the other fun stuff, 4-day splits and bodybuilding things and whatnot.
So you're telling me that people don't have to lift for like multiple hours every day with, biceps, back, tri, right, in order to progress and build muscle. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's it. Squat, deads, pressing, bench, overhead. I like overhead pressing too. And that's it. Just start with the basics. Multi-joint, compound movements, heavy. You mentioned on our other podcast, teaser, spoiler alert. Yeah. I think you said 75% of 1RM, 4 to 6 reps. I think that's a beautiful, like a perfect starting range for most people. We know the studies say you can achieve hypertrophy, which is muscle building, at a wide range of like, 3 to 30 or 100, even 90 sets, I think has been studied. But when it comes to strength, there is a minimum, I think it's 65% is the true minimum threshold of your max, where a different mechanism kicks in terms of your hormones and your neuromuscular adaptation to build strength. And it's so powerful. Bone density. Ladies, if you're worried about osteopenia, osteoporosis, that's where it's at. So that's my training approach. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's got to do it. And honestly, I feel sad when someone, whether they come into my group program, one-on-one clients, I got them covered, but like I have a group program as well, and it's a little more self-directed, right? So when I have someone who says, I'm frustrated, I can't lose weight, I'm like, are you training? Like we talked about, like, I gave you workouts, I gave you the chance to come in with videos. You've got check-ins. You can reach us out anytime. Are you doing? And they'll say, no, I haven't gotten today, but I really want to lose weight. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. Like, we need to be training and dialed in with our nutrition somewhat before we could start to lose fat. So that's my training basic.
Love it. And then nutrition. So is there anything, specifically with one-on-one clients, specifically what's kind of maybe like a pathway, like when they come in, that maybe that first 3 months, the next 3 months, like give us a little, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's probably not dissimilar to how you do it because it's so well tested, and that's a periodized approach where you don't diet and you don't gain initially because you don't know what you're doing yet. Like, I'm just going to be honest. You've got to track. I'm a big fan of data and tracking, and I'd make it easy and as frictionless as possible. We use apps that are like very good apps that take 3 minutes a day kind of thing, where you're just, you know, how much is going in your mouth, you know, how much protein, fiber, and micronutrients you have. And most people have trouble because they're not eating enough, right? Like we've talked about that. They're not eating enough protein. They're not eating enough fiber and carb, really the whole thing. Fats are usually okay for most people. And then the calories itself. I mean, I will have male clients who are like my size. I'm 5'9", I'm like 180. And they come in and I'm asking them to eat like 1,900 or 2,000 calories because it happens to be 400 more than they're eating. And they're like, this is a lot of food. What? I'm like, try eating 4,000 calories. I'll tell you. That's what I have in my head.
Yeah.
My compassionate coach speak is, hey, I got you, buddy. Like, here's how we do it. Like, here's some foods for you. Maybe some calorie density going in there.
I mean, when I was prepping, I was eating 2,400 calories on like a daily basis. Like, so, I mean, and I'm 5'8" and, you know, I was 120 pounds. So
just for sure.
Some perspective, like.
Yeah. And everybody's very different, right, with their expenditure. Everything, I've seen everything from, you know, 1,400 or 1,500 calories for like a 110-pound female up to somebody I was working with was eating like 6,000 calories, but he was like a hybrid athlete. So big guy, hybrid athlete. But yeah, the first like 2 months, I would say for most people, some people are really dialed in. It might only take 4 weeks. It's dialing in your tracking. You're sufficiently eating enough energy and protein and balance. You know, you talked about blood sugar. I don't always like go right to explaining that's the reason we do it, but it's more like, hey, meal timing, your training, consistency, let's just make that happen. And then we'll eventually connect it to these things. And then when you sort of prove to yourself that you're ready, that you're training, that you're consistent, they have enough energy. Sleep and stress are important too. It depends on the person. Now we're ready to go after it. And then it depends. Are we gaining? Are we losing? And we periodize from there.
Cool. Love it. And last topic I want to talk about is losing weight, right? Losing fat without prioritizing muscle. What happens? What do you see? You know, what are the implications of that?
They're huge. And we now have definitive proof from the GLP-1 studies because, and so caveat here, whether you're on the weight loss drugs or not, if you crash diet or if you lose weight quickly and you're not training, you're going to have pretty much the same result. So they're definitely not using the drugs as a boogeyman here. What they show is these people lose their appetite. They go on big calorie deficits almost unintentionally because they just can't eat and they're not training. And all of a sudden, out of the weight that they lose, up to 40% is muscle mass. Now, someone tried to argue with me and say, well, that's fat-free mass. And I said, well, that's the mean is fat-free mass, but the upper limit for some of these people is 40% of actual muscle tissue. So if you're losing 10 pounds, 4 of that is muscle, no bueno. Like that is not good at all because now you're going to have to build all that back and it's going to be a lot of work. So this leads to what? It leads to a lower metabolism. It leads to fairly wrecked hormones in the short term until you recover. It leads to the cravings and hunger signals just being so out of whack that you want to binge and eat sugars and fats and high energy foods because your body is starving for them. It could also lead to hyperphagia, which is like the loss of muscle mass causing ravenous desire to consume. And that leads to binging and yo-yo dieting, all the things. Go look at the Biggest Loser data and you'll see exactly what happened there. Yeah.
To pay all that money and, you know, do all that work, and especially with the GLP-1s and, you know, like you said, not to demonize those things because the reality of it is actually when done properly, studies have shown that people using GLP-1 actually maintain muscle mass better with fat loss when they are strength training, getting adequate protein, calorie, right, all those things. So, but most people are not doing that. So, and again, you know, if you go through the suffering of losing fat and doing all that, you want to keep it off. And unfortunately, most people don't when they do it in that way without prioritizing muscle. So that is unfortunate. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you for that information. That was great. If you guys want the other half of this, you enjoyed what you heard, make sure to go listen to the other half of Philip's interview on with me on the Wits and Weights podcast. And thank you for being here.
And don't sell yourself short. They are two complete conversations. It's not even halves. They're actually whole conversations, guys. You listen, and I don't mean to correct you. I'm just trying to like hype it up for everyone.
I like it. It's true. They were completely different. So all powerful information. Go check it out, and everything will be linked in the show notes for you guys. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Fitness Simplified Podcast. We are stoked to have you join us on your journey to better health and fitness. If you have any questions, suggestions for future topics, or just want to chat, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Brooke_Elysian and Facebook linked in the show notes, or via our website, ElysianWomen'sWellness.com. If you enjoyed what you heard today, we would be thrilled if you could take a half second to leave us a 5-star rating and review. Not only will you be helping others find our show, but you'll also be entered into our monthly $100 giveaway for new reviews. If there was something you heard that was helpful or impactful, please screenshot it, tag me, and share what it was so that we can bring you more. Plus, you'll be entered into our monthly Legion Recharge post-workout giveaway. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more. Thanks for listening.